we all, uh, and I mean we all, have areas that are lingering. We all have things to let go of. There's just, no matter how old or how young you are, there are things that we are hanging on to, um, emotionally, physically, some are even subconsciously, but there's always things we're hanging on to. So thank you for. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of our Guided Together podcast. I'm Jacqueline Kuhn with Powered by Angels and Guided by Purpose. I am bringing you this podcast series to expand your knowledge and also expand your reach. I work with soul purpose work, angels, and astrology, and there are so many other things that people can do to find and live their purpose. That is the reason for this podcast, so I can expose you to others who have different ways of handling things, because not one way works for everybody. I myself have actually been to multiple coaches, so I want you to have that same experience. Today, I will be joined by Susan Curtis. She is founder of Greater Insight, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her later. But we want to start with our opening moment, where we bring in our archangels to be with us during this session. And so I welcome you all to join me in the invocation. If you wish, I will be closing my eyes and taking a couple of deep breaths to get grounded in the moment and set our intentions. Archangel Michael, please be with us while we do the recording, and to those who are watching it, bathe us in the light of your protection. Protect us from all lower energies, anything evil, and the evil one. Archangel Gabriel, you are the archangel for communication. Help Susan and I speak clearly and intentionally. Help our listeners and viewers hear the messages that they need to hear. Help us bring the message to those who need to hear it, and help them retain and take what they need and leave the rest. We are always grateful for your ever presence around us. And so it is. And so it is. Okay. So like I said, with me is Susan Curtis, and she has an incredible education in psychology and human behavior. She has done a whole bunch of things in her career, from publishing and entrepreneurship. She has a really interesting pivot story herself, which involves an earthquake, and we'll get to that later. But it's really incredible how she came to where she is today, and it is her method that helped me create my best-selling book. So without further ado, I introduce Susan Curtis. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Thank you, Jacqueline. I'm delighted to be speaking with you and your guests today. You kind of mentioned an unspoken uneasiness that some of us experience, and I want to name something that most high achievers won't say out loud. You can do everything right and still feel like something's missing. But that's not a flaw, it's a signal. It's a life disruption, and it's something we all experience. I know, Jacqueline, you call it soul purpose disruption. Mine actually came from something that shook me to the core, as you touched on briefly, literally the Northridge earthquake. And I'll tell you the full story in a minute, because it changed everything for me. But here's what I've learned, that disruption shows up in one of 3 ways. Today, I want to show you all 3. We're going to talk about all 3 and then help you reflect on how your own life can help you navigate to a more aligned life. So for me, I was jolted out of bed by an 8.3 bolt, pitch black, like nothing I'd ever experienced before. A bookcase, I went rushing into my 3-year-old daughter's room. A bookcase fell on her bed, nearly smooshed her. and it became known as the Northridge earthquake. Everything was down, traffic lights were down, entire floors of garages fell on the level below. And I was at that time publisher of a major technology magazine, and we had just sold our magazine to a larger media company. And it was my role, I was sold along with it, and it was my role to keep everything going and succeeding as we had built. And we had to still get the magazine out, which was amazing. So um, the powers that be, or were, decided to bring in a Beverly Hills-based shrink to talk with all of us and help us get through this really emotional experience. And when he was finished with his day with us, with his time with us, he said, "I'm here for the day. I'm willing to talk with any of you who would like to go a little deeper." And I said, as leader, I said, "I will." And we had our time together. And I said to him, I know that you're paid for by the people who just bought us, but the fact is, I'm just so very unhappy. I've always reached and exceeded highest levels of accomplishment and stuck to everything I've committed to, but I'm really unhappy here, and we're a disconnect as it is because I'm entrepreneurial and they're very, very rigid by comparison. And my values, I think, have really shifted with this sudden bolt. And he said, "Why don't you leave?" And I thought, leave? I could leave? It just had never dawned on me. And I gave that thought in the moment and then over the next couple of weeks. And I decided indeed I would. So I gave them 6 months notice, found a new replacement, found a new publisher for them, and indeed moved on to listening more to that voice inside of me and moving on to work that I found more supported my own new values. So when I look back at that, at first I used to say, well, I just needed someone to give me permission. And then I realized even further, I needed someone, no, what I needed was to learn to give myself permission. And that's the step that I want to encourage all of you to think about, because that's where your true alignment and identity come from. So that's the first of three types of shifts that I wanted to talk about. The second is one that Jacqueline has, one of the best stories I've heard. It's for the type of disruption that's called the straw that breaks the camel's back. And of course, you've all heard of that. Listen to Jacqueline and she'll tell you about what happened to her.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. So when Susan and I were talking, and I told her one of the major pivot moments that I had was back in 2008. So I had this incredible job. I was a senior director of an IT department for one of the largest retail office supply chains. I'm not going to name names. You can figure it out. I had 30 some people on my staff. I had a $50 million budget. I was making more money than I had ever made before in my life. Yay, on paper, everybody said, gosh, this is great. But I really honestly was just always working. My job required me to be kind of on call. And my moment that broke me was my husband and I are hockey fans, and we had tickets to my team. So my team was playing the home team. I'm not a fan of my home team. And we're at the game. We've got amazing tickets, and I'm on call, right? Always on call, and a disaster recovery call came in, and I had to take it. I had to leave that game, that hockey game, mid-game, and spend almost the entire game on the phone. At that point, I was like, that's enough, right? That's enough. Like, why have this job and the money and all these incredible perks? My husband enjoyed it. He had a great time. But when I had to kind of be on the phone, and within a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, literally left that to open up my own business. This was 2008. This was when the real estate market collapsed. This is when nobody was leaving their jobs. I just had enough and I left.
Bravo. Yeah, that was a major straw that broke the camel's back. Sorry you had to go through that. And I'm so glad that you did, because the work that you're doing today seems to be so reflecting you.
Yeah, and it's you know my change before this was I was actually let go when my company got acquired. So, I had never really consciously made a decision to join this company. It was one of really, okay, I have to find another job because I hadn't planned leaving that other one, right? My company got bought out. So I almost, I took this job, was uncomfortable taking it, to be honest. So I probably should have never really been in it. And finally, inside of me, that straw came and said, okay, this is it, right? You can't pretend anymore. We cannot fake it anymore. This is not where you're supposed to be. You've got to go. But it took something that extreme for me to choose myself, as opposed to just kind of, keeping the status quo.
Fabulous, fabulous that you came out of that as well as you did. And then there's that third type of disruption that I alluded to, and we're calling it the slow burn. So many people talk about burnout. Well, this is where that comes from. My own burnout story, it seemed like I had been so enjoying my work as a coach, course creator, facilitator. And suddenly, a couple of years ago, a couple of summers ago, Jacqueline, I just had lost that spark. I was working so hard. I'm in front of my computer 11, 12 hours a day, and that spark was really extinguishing. So people were saying, I didn't recognize what was going on actually, but some of my dearest coaching friends were saying to me, Susan, you're burned out. And it was visible to everyone else but me. So I decided to take what I called my European August. Now, that doesn't mean that I got on a plane and flew to Europe, which I had, but rather years and years ago, I studied for a year in Geneva, and I recognized that everyone in Europe, I mean, this is almost universal, takes the month of August off. How healthy, how amazing. And so I decided to do that, to give myself that time, but leave it to me in my more old way of doing things, let's say. I decided to create a spreadsheet to manage my European August, which I find so laughable right now. And so I created tabs across the bottom with a tab on what books I was going to read, and another on which rooms I was going to clear out, and another on which beautiful things I was going to go and visit. And I felt now ready to take my European August. Well, I have to tell you, I never once consulted that spreadsheet, not once. But it probably was valuable looking back, because it helped me recognize that what really had to happen in order to give myself that peace and that room is to figure out what had to be subtracted from my life, not what had to be added in, but what are the things that aren't needed, that I'm willing to let go of. And you might want to be thinking about that too, because we're going to do a little exercise that are going to let you think about that. So
Yeah, that's a
you
really
mentioned,
powerful statement, Susan. What needs to be subtracted? Because we oftentimes look for what more do I need,
right?
not what do we have that is no longer servicing us that we can, let go of. That's just a really great point, because it's not always about searching for more. It's about what is getting in our way. What do we have lingering around that's actually getting in our way? I love that.
Thank you. And what's bringing in pressure, and what's bringing in that sense of, especially with women, um, we we grow up believing, we're encouraged to think we have to do it all and exceed at it all, and respond to everyone else's rules and regulations about how to live a good life. right? It's first our parents and the rules that they give to us, our families, our teachers, our elementary school teachers. We fall into line. And we do that throughout our education. And then we do that in order to, get to the next level of education and then move into and get a job and all the steps and so much of obligation. And so that's why I bring forth this idea of what to subtract, because it's so much more generous to you. So that's what we're going to look at. And I'm going to offer a little gift at the end of our conversation. I hope you'll stick around so that you can know what's coming, because this will very quickly, it's very, very it's a helpful guide to come up with what can you subtract in your life and be the better for it.
Yeah, because when we have, what's really interesting is my very first podcast guest for this season was literally a woman who is a declutter expert. She helps you declutter your home. Like, because if you've got too much stuff, and you don't know where anything is, you're not organized, it's hard to live your purpose. And I have another podcast guest who is a Sedona method practitioner where you emotionally let go of your things in your subconscious. And it's really interesting that much of this podcast is in the themes are really more about letting go, not getting more. And
Right.
I know just from my own angel work that it's in, gratitude for what we have and letting go of things that are not in our way, that we get more. You don't get more by hoarding and holding on to what you have. Abundance comes when you release things to make room for new. So I love that. And I love that later we'll get to that free gift, because I think people don't know how to do that really well.
It's true. So perhaps what we can do, we're going to take a few moments and give our guests a chance to think about your own experience and how this aligns for you, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. So we want you all to do an exercise to understand what it's like working with Susan and how Susan can help you in your own journeys. So get a pen and paper, or if you're an online note taker, whatever works for you, because we're going to have an interactive moment here so that you can learn a little bit about yourselves. So the next 15-20 minutes or so, Susan, the floor is yours.
wow, thank you. So, one first step while you're pulling out where you're going to be recording your own thoughts is to think back to when you were, say, 16, when you had so many fewer responsibilities and all the hope and opportunity in the world. Just take a breath and imagine what that was like. And since then, you've lived a lot of life. Everybody has stuff along their life path, which, by the way, we don't often notice. Everybody's within their own shell, their body, their skin. And so it feels like we're the only ones who are going through all of this. But one of my greatest recognitions, very young, was that everybody has stuff going on in their head, and that it gives a lot more patience and understanding of what others are experiencing and how we relate with them. So, with that in mind, I'd like to take a moment for you to think about what might be preventing you from making a move, or even listening to your own voice, or to the signals inside of you. What's the stuff you've been carrying that you don't often say out loud? Where's that coming from? Let's give you a minute. Sometimes that's a sense of obligation. Sometimes that's what you've always done. I've always done it this way, and therefore I have to continue. So maybe a moment to think about what habits are you responding to that you've never really thought of doing things any other way. So again, what are you carrying that you don't often say out loud? And now think back. Has there been a moment that you'd call your own act of God? Some sudden event, some illness, something, some shake in a relationship, perhaps, or some crisis that forced something in you to shift? There may be a few. Just jot them down and type them up. Know that that moment of disruption is something that you have to honor, that you surely honor. And I don't want to talk over you while you're thinking, but I have to say that for me, I've stuffed those moments. And this is a chance for you to have some recognition for what you've survived, gotten through, but nonetheless, they're a disruptor. So I'll give you another moment. And now, is there a straw that broke the camel's back? Remember Jacqueline's story? Something that has hit you and you realize, I just can't take it anymore. This is it. What was your straw? What was the thing that you were just coping with and coping with and coping with? And then it was just too much. Or maybe you are in a slow burn, some gradual dimming that you haven't been naming. Feeling burned out, not willing to name it as burned out. Where's the cause of that? What is the cause of that? Perhaps that situation that you adapted to and accepted time after time is slowly eating away and slowly extinguishing your spark. So go ahead and name that. Thank you. And now let's think about who defined the rules of your life. Whose rules and habits and rituals have become yours? That one's an easy one, relatively. It just helps to recognize it. Who's been most influential in creating your whole way of being? And some of that is good. You can maybe set up two columns because there's rituals and ways of managing that you are perfectly happy to make a part of yours. But others that kind of create a disconnect. Could be bosses, could be family, single family member. Just expectations of society. So go ahead and jot those down. Think about who you've been, also who have you been trying to please? A lot of us are pleasers. Maybe to a parent, a boss, an industry, some version of success that isn't fully yours. Perhaps put a big star next to the ones that you recognize might just not be fully yours, but nonetheless you dutifully please. So now we're going to turn our attention to where you're looking to go. What are you looking to become? My favorite part. So let's imagine you're a fly on the wall, or more pleasantly, a butterfly on the wall, watching your life this past year. What would it say about you? Take that moment, write down what the observer would say about you this past year. Where's your focus been? Now, where does that match who you actually want to, I'm saying who, yeah, where you actually want to be, who you actually want to be. Draw an arrow or check mark, whatever you can do on your computer, if that's how you're doing this, to who you actually want to be. Maybe put a W for who. And next, let's think about, so you've looked at where you've been this last year and whether it's a match aligning with who you wish to be and where you wish to be. Now we're going to give you a chance to dream of what you wish to be, who you want to be becoming. Becoming is a really key part. It's not recognizing every moment that everything you're doing is crucial in this moment. It's recognizing that you're in a process. We all are, and you're becoming. So, who do you dream of becoming? Not the resume, not the one more notch on your resume or your LinkedIn, but the real you. What would that feel like? And so, do you recognize a gap? Is there a distance between what that butterfly on the wall saw when it looked at your life this past year and the you dream of becoming? Is there a space, a disconnect, something that doesn't feel aligned? Because recognizing that gap is oh so crucial and so valuable. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person who's grabbing the reins of your life and recognizing what movement would be the most helpful. And it doesn't mean, as we talked about before, adding more. It may very well mean, what can you subtract? And so it's that gap work that I especially want to underline and encourage you to make a part of your own self-view, self-analysis, so that life doesn't just happen to you, so that those 3 types of disruptions don't just happen to you. And then you're recognizing, okay, that's another disruptor, but rather each one of those, whether it's an act of God, a straw that breaks the camel's back, or maybe just the slow burn, each one of those disruptors, they have a purpose, and you're going to be able to use them to get so much closer to the you that you're becoming and want to be.
That was amazing. That was
Oh,
wonderful,
thank you.
Susan.
Thank you.
And for, for our viewers, this dovetails really well into and on top of the soul purpose work you may already be doing, because their soul purpose work will point you in the direction of what your purpose is. Doing some of this gap work helps you understand how to get there. And, we all may know where we want to go, but we have to have a roadmap to that destination.
Yes.
And being able to bridge that gap is one of the things that Susan did. And when her and I kind of were working together to get to know each other, we went through some exercises that quantified really my process and who I am and what I stand for, and that gap, and that actually became my Living Your Purpose book, which became an Amazon bestseller the week before we recorded this.
Woohoo.
So it really does work. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, this is all very complementary. This all works together. This is all work that needs to happen. And I love the word becoming, for you to become who you're meant to be. We're not asking you to change. We're not asking you to not be who you really are. We're asking you to become the person you've always meant to be. But it is a journey, because as Susan mentioned in one of her questions, right? Whose story are whose rules are you living by? Who put
Yes.
those rules in your head? Like, who told you you had to be a certain way? That's really, really key. And so Susan, this work this little sample of your work, which I found valuable, because I took a couple of nuggets right here in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Because by the way, people, coaches all do their own work too. If you're working with a coach that says they don't do their own internal work, you need to find another coach. Because if they're not doing their own work, they're not going to be able to help you. By the way, personal point of view here. So public service announcement. So like,
True.
if people want to, continue working with you or move forward, what do you suggest they do? Or what would you say would be really good next steps here?
Thank you. Yes. Well, what I'd really love to leave you all with is that if anything I've shared today struck a nerve, and if you've felt that gap between the life you've built and who you're actually becoming, I put together a gift for you that I think you'll really enjoy, and it'll give you a chance to go a few steps deeper in just a few minutes. It's a short read. I call it the quiet corners. I'm sorry, I call it it's four questions that I call the quiet cornerstones. And it's designed to help you start noticing what you're ready to subtract. That's what I alluded to. And I'm going to help you figure that part out before you say yes to one more thing that isn't actually yours to carry. So I'd love to help you to do that. And you can grab it in the show notes and description below. And if it resonates, then there's a way to go deeper from there. I'd love to talk with you about what you're ready to let go of and how to help you give yourself permission, the permission that you need to finally give yourself to step into that new becoming. So that would be my pleasure. I hope you'll join me over there.
That's fabulous. I think everybody should take should take that read, because um, we all uh, and I mean we all have areas that are lingering. We all have things to let go of. There's just, no matter how old or how young you are, there are things that we are hanging on to, um, emotionally, physically. Some are even subconsciously, but there's always things we're hanging on to. So thank you for that gift. That's amazing. Um, I am going to be giving you all a gift myself. On my website, you will see my August events. I have a free event first week in August, and then my Name Your Price. At the end of August, we have Name Your Price Soul Contract Workshop, where we just will discuss what your soul contract was when you came into this earth. And once you learn that, then go back to this what do you need to let go of assessment of Susan's to really help you understand how do you honor that soul contract. Could be a perfect complement with each other. Do you have any final words for the audience before we do a closing invocation?
You know, this has been, first of all, Jacqueline, thank you so much. Chatting with you, talking with you, with this wonderful audience is a real privilege. And I really want to thank you. And I do hope that you'll join me over, you folks will join me over there and go through this little process with me. And then if you want to go deeper, I'm setting aside a few one-on-one conversations that are also complimentary, depending on where you are. And there'll be information there on how you can do that too, if you'd like to. If this is really unearthed in you something that is a recognition that you really want to explore. So again, thanks, Jacqueline. I love your work.
That's very generous of you, especially a one-on-one complimentary call. Very generous of you. And okay, so let's now have our gratitude closing moment. I want to thank you all for being here, for Susan, for being my guest, for my viewers and my subscribers, for watching this episode, and subscribing to my channel, liking this current video. And I want to call in Archangel Metatron. You are the keeper of our Akashic record. You know who we are meant to be, and help guide us to making those decisions on what to leave, what to let go of, giving ourselves permission to become the people we were meant to be. And Archangel Ariel, you are our archangel for courage. It takes courage to step up and make the changes, to fill in those gaps that we talked about. So Archangel Ariel, please be with all of us as we work to close those gaps in our life. With gratitude, in purpose and peace. Thank you so much for joining this episode. Goodbye for now.